This video is sponsored by Incogni.
Up next, he is large and in charge, Nasser El Sonbaty of Yugoslavia.
Who do you admire the most?
I don't admire anyone.
Who do you want to beat most?
No, I don't want to be anyone.
Nasser El Sonbaty, the biggest of the big.
He was one of the freakiest bodybuilders we've ever seen.
I can't believe how big he was.
Can you believe this size is phenomenal?
I was never in the person of somebody who was that big.
In second place, Nasser El Sonbaty.
The guy that came closest to beat me also.
You put El Sonbaty ahead of Yates as impressive.
Yeah, I thought he should have won easy.
He beat Dorian.
He should have won, yeah.
He absolutely won that show.
I would have given it to Nasser.
Nasser should deserve to beat Dorian.
When I went back to the hotel room, I was actually crying because I felt completely wrong.
That was one of the biggest injustices on our sports scene to date.
Enigmatic, mysterious, and impossible to understand completely. In bodybuilding, perhaps no personality is more enigmatic than Nasser El Sonbaty, the highly intelligent man with a master's degree who could fluently speak 7 languages. Earning the nickname The Professor was a mystery to everyone around him. The 5'11", 280-pound mass monster presented a physique that threatened to collapse the stage every time he stepped on it, making his way from being just another shapeless monster from Europe into serious Mr. Olympia contention. Once tipped for Olympia glory, he soon became far more well-known as a broken man, haunted by the bitterness of a single loss that, to this day, is still considered one of the most outrageous robberies in bodybuilding history, one that signaled his tragic downfall. Rather than retire into a life of guest-posing stints and seminars, Nasser chose to open fire against everyone whom he thought had wronged him, from officials and judges to fellow competitors, before resorting to selling his used gym clothes and posing trunks online towards the end of his dying career. This is the tragic robbery and the devastating demise of Nasser El Sonbaty. Right from the outset, Nasser was different. Unlike most bodybuilding stories, this one didn't start with admiration, but with disdain. Born in Stuttgart, Germany on October 15, 1965, to an Egyptian father and Yugoslavian mother, Nasser didn't seem destined for the stage. At the age of 17 and already weighing 187 pounds, Nasser only started lifting to strengthen his legs for his main interest, soccer. In a 2008 Bodybuilding.com interview, he recalled, "At the beginning, I even hated the two big bodies. The veins of the guys in the magazines and the crazy eating schedules of serious people. I never wanted to become a pro bodybuilder, and I never had the desire to look like a bodybuilder when I started out. I just wanted to do some leg presses and some leg extensions in order to have stronger legs for soccer. But at the time, I met a former Hungarian weightlifter there that showed me exercises for the upper body in order for me to have a balanced physique." Nasser started taking training more seriously, joining a real gym and even claiming to bench press 154 pounds on his first time there. His transition from soccer to bodybuilding took 2 years, and as the gains kept coming, his disdain turned into passion. Unlike many bodybuilders, Nasser didn't have any idols in the sport and never aspired to look like any of the top pros.
Who's your hero in bodybuilding? Who do you admire the most?
I don't admire anyone. No heroes, no cartoon characters, no Arnold.
Even stating that he never wanted to look like Arnold, since he thought that Arnold had weak legs, droopy shoulders, and a huge waist. Soon enough, in 1985, he entered his first junior competition, weighing 192 pounds, where he took 6th place and was told by the judges that he had the best abs of any junior contestant in the show, an opinion he would later take one step further, stating that he had the most symmetrical abs in the history of bodybuilding. Nonetheless, his placing at his first show motivated him to keep training and competing alongside school despite his father being critical of the sport. He saw bodybuilders as dumb, narcissistic people, and bodybuilding as a waste of time, energy, and money. Given how injurious bodybuilding training can be, there were concerns about his son's safety in the gym. But just as important as safety in the gym is your safety online, which today's sponsor, Incogni, will help you with. You know those spam emails plaguing your inbox that you can't seem to get rid of? Well, they're just a small part of a much bigger threat to your privacy. Your personal data is more valuable and vulnerable than you realize. Data brokers are companies whose sole purpose is to gather this information and sell it for profit. Some of the data they can access includes your name, address, social media profiles, financial information, and even court records and social security numbers. This data can end up in the hands of companies for advertising purposes, scammers, and fraudsters. This information can be used to steal your identity and take out huge loans in your name without your knowledge. And with the rise of AI, scammers can even mimic the voices of friends and family to trick victims into sending them money, relying entirely on the voice data they can find online. Incogni has access to over 230 data brokers. They reach out to them on your behalf, request the removal of your personal data, and handle any objections in a fully automated process, saving you hours. I put in my own name, and Incogni immediately identified 49 data brokers with my data, submitting removal requests on my behalf and saving me about 12 hours. Protect your most sensitive information while supporting the channel. Click the link in the description or go to incogni.com/ironhistorian and use the code IRONHISTORIAN to get 60% off your annual plan. Thank you, Incogni, for sponsoring this video. After high school, Nasser attended university and graduated with a master's degree in political science, history, and sociology. He was very sharp and was later renowned for his ability to fluently speak 7 languages, which later earned him the nickname, The Professor. Nasser's first junior victories in the late 80s began to pile up and spurred him on to train as hard as he possibly could and gain his pro card at the 1990 IFBB Grand Prix in Helsinki, Finland.
I turned 1990 pro in Helsinki, Finland. I came in my first pro show in 8th place, and the winner of this show was at that time Momo Benaziza. From 90 on, I've been straight competing.
Most guys who crack the Olympia top 6 on multiple occasions, just as Nasser would eventually do, tend to rise pretty fast through the pro ranks. But Nasser didn't, as his pro career wasn't very promising in the beginning.
The first couple of years was pretty difficult as a pro, so I didn't place really good. Then I thought 93, after being for 4 years in the pro ranks, if I won't qualify for the Olympia, I definitely will quit bodybuilding. But it worked finally out. I qualified 93, but didn't do the Olympia.
By 1993, his career started to gain momentum, and after several European podium finishes, he decided to move to where all the bodybuilding action was taking place, California. 1994 was a breakthrough year for Nasser, who took a controversial second place to Mike Francois at the Night of Champions. He later recalled, "I think that I should have won that specific show, but they let Mike Francois, as the reigning USA champion, take the title. I was just the unknown, or better, the unimportant guy from Europe." Nasser's European success didn't go unnoticed for long, as it eventually led him to receive another invitation to the biggest stage of all, the 1994 Mr. Olympia. He'd already declined last year's Olympia invitation to focus on looking his best for this one. Nasser was not yet monstrous. In fact, he was still something of a classicist himself. He put on a great showing, securing 7th place ahead of guys like Charles Claremont, Andreas Munzer, Sonny Schmidt, and Ronnie Coleman. No one was expecting Nasser to rival the current reigning king of the Big O. Even with a freshly torn bicep, not even Sean Ray or Kevin Levrone could dethrone Dorian Yates.
So for him to show up, I thought, man, he must be Superman or he's going to be way off.
I think Sean and I knew that with our symmetry, it would probably be virtually almost impossible for him to win a Mr. Olympia with a torn bicep.
The result was a very controversial Olympia that would repeat itself just 3 years later, bringing about the downfall of Nasser himself. Following the 94 Olympia, Nasser's physique caught the attention of Joe Weider, who, according to Nasser, was the only person who believed in his potential. Joe offered him a full-time contract, allowing him to focus all of his time and energy on training and dieting. The upcoming 6 Grand Prix contests, with his lowest placing being 4th and his highest being 2nd, coupled with 2 victories at the Night of Champions and Houston Pro, signaled that the 270-pounder was on the move.
I won the Tournament of Champions in California, and Nasser was the guest poser, and it was 3 weeks before the Olympia. I watched Nasser guest pose, and I couldn't believe how big he was, number one, and number two, how big he was that far out from the show, and like it seemed like he was holding a lot of water. I remember the next day I went to Gold's to do a photo shoot in Venice, and I remember Nasser was there on the bike, and he had gone out to Cheesecake Factory with us. He ate like 3 pieces of cheesecake, and it was 3 weeks from the show. And I remember he did like 2 or 3 hours in one session on the bike at Gold's Gym Venice that next day, which amazed me because we're not supposed to be on more than an hour at a time.
Last year I competed at Olympia with 245 pounds. This year I'm 270. The other guys made also a lot of improvement, especially Dorian Yates was the first, and everybody's following him now in size and also in quality.
At this year's Olympia, everyone wanted to see how Dorian would rebound from his bicep injury. With Sean Ray coming so close last year, and with Kevin Lavroni already placing 2nd and 3rd to Dorian before, the competition was on.
In 3rd place, competitor number 1, Nasser El Sonbaty.
In the end, Nasser leapt to 3rd place, announcing his arrival as the biggest threat to Dorian, whom he could match in both size and weight. But the controversies would begin to find their way into Nasser's career very shortly. As Nasser progressed through his career, he began to develop a critical view of the professional judging system as he noticed inconsistencies in how judges evaluated competitors, leading him to question the fairness of the results. He believed that some major bodybuilding competitions were rigged and felt he was unfairly judged on several occasions by what he considered corrupt or incompetent officials, a fate that he was going to face soon enough, not just once, but twice.
I'm pretty convinced today, at the day of the show, I made really not only improvement in quantity because I'm 10 pounds heavier, but also in quality.
Nasser showed up at this year's Olympia in his best condition to date, repeating last year's placing, but this time with a certain degree of controversy. After being celebrated for his great conditioning that night, Nasser failed a diuretic test that was introduced during the '96 Olympia, and a month later, he learned that he was disqualified.
That was the best Nasser ever looked, I thought.
I remember writing how strange it was. They were only testing for diuretics. I think it was Wayne DeMille. I asked him, why only diuretics? He says, that's the drug that can kill you right away.
You know, there's a lot of talk about this show 96, where I was admitting that I was taking diuretics. Jay Cutler, 4 or 5 years later, after I was basically so-called caught in the diuretic test, he was also caught in a diuretic test. But the biggest difference between me and him was he actually threatened the NPC, and who else was part of that if he gets disqualified. So nobody finally disqualified him. He kept his placement and he kept his money. If I would have had a different name, a different background, and would have been as outspoken as I sometimes am, that it would never happen that way, that I got punished like Jay Cutler never got punished.
Nasser, who had his own doubts regarding the legitimacy of the test, later said in the 2008 interview, "The diuretic testing supposedly started at the 1996 Olympia, and I still do not believe until today that it was done for sure. I never saw my positive test result, and I was the only one who was caught. Nobody else was caught because other guys used other diuretics that were off the list, or the collected test results had never been sent in." Another problem Nasser had with the IFBB was his claim of the introduction of drug testing for substances like cocaine and Nubain, which was dropped shortly after, since many of the pros used these substances and the IFBB didn't want over 50% of the competitors to test positive. Eventually, Nasser moved past it, but telling journalist Peter McGuff, "I gambled and lost, but I'm not going to cry about it. I can't. The diuretics make that impossible." After all, the disqualification didn't stop his growing popularity one bit, as he extended the year with 3 victories and 3 podium finishes in the '96 Grand Prix contests. But his popularity was just about to hit an all-time high, right before the inevitable downfall. Vying for his 6th Sandow in a row, Dorian Yates was training harder than ever this year. The 35-year-old was already known for his brutal, hardcore training style, and with a few injuries already under his belt, training with the same intensity for years was a gamble, one he would end up losing.
I had very severe tricep tendonitis all year round, and I really need to take time off, right? Time off, therapy, but with my mentality, with my mindset, and also, this is Mr. Olympia, you got people chasing your ass, right?
And I tore tendon almost like 100% tricep tendon. I think it was hanging on by 5%. And that's the second injury was career ending. It was 3 weeks before the Mr. Olympia, and literally now I couldn't train. Nothing, no weight training for 3 weeks.
Even posing, which I was quite regimented with, doing an hour a day of posing, I couldn't really do that because I was scared, like tensing too much might even pop it. So again, it's like, well, you know, we've been here before.
Touted by some as the prime contender to dethrone the king was Flex Wheeler, due to a series of strong showings in other competitions. However, that threat was eliminated after Flex withdrew from the Olympia due to an alleged carjacking incident. Last year's runner-up, Sean Ray, was determined to take what he thought was rightfully his back in '94. Sean had the aesthetics, the cuts, and the symmetry, but lacked the overall size to overtake the Shadow. After a string of solid showings, including a 2nd place at the Arnold Classic, 3 third places, and 3 second places in the Grand Prix, Nasser was ready to create an upset at this year's Olympia. It wasn't unusual for Nasser to get up to 315 pounds in the off-season. The 32-year-old behemoth was one of the very few people who had the size, weight, and height to challenge Dorian while sporting even better aesthetics. And with Dorian at his most vulnerable, were the fans about to witness a new Mr. Olympia being crowned?
I'd like to officially welcome you to the annual Joe Weider Mr. Olympia competition.
So this year I will have probably 275 pounds. I think it doesn't mean that I'm smaller. I think I look even bigger, I'm sharper, and I'm straightened more than ever. And overall, I improved.
I believe I was around 256. And this year, I'm around 268, the same hard condition, so I think I made a tremendous improvement.
And I was not in the best shape, and I was not mentally in the right place because of the injury. And I was still had inflammation, I still had pain, so I was not my usual powerful, confident self going into the competition.
I could see that Dorian was heavy in the midsection, that his arm was literally non-existent because there was no bicep and no tricep.
He actually looked the worst he'd ever looked as a Mr. Olympia in 1997.
His proportions and symmetry were, to me, awful. Not awful.
You see the left arm, he had that torn bicep, but even his arm size in general was just down because he couldn't train really, because he had the torn tricep too. I think you can see a little of that black and blue possibly over there as well.
I was at that show, 4 feet away from them, backstage. Nasser's legs from the side looked twice as big as Dorian's. I had a full leg bicep. Dorian had like no leg biceps at the show. See, it was almost like a trick. Like Dorian's calves were so big that you almost didn't notice that his legs were out of proportion. His symmetry and proportions were off. If I were a judge, I would have given it to Nasser.
Yeah.
With that, you had everything. He was big. You might say he was too big, but he was in shape and he had nice symmetry and proportion.
Nasser just was in peak condition. He had no injuries. He just looked great. He was sharp. His face was drawn. This was his best. I mean, his legs were phenomenally detailed.
Nasser held on to a little bit of what he had in Chicago, size-wise. Not conditioning-wise, but he was big. He was right there with Dorian. This is an opportunity for the judges to do something that's right for the sport.
In 2nd place, Nasser El Sonbaty. Mr. Olympia, Dorian.
Another controversial win for the Shadow.
That was one of the biggest injustices on our sports scene to date.
He beat Dorian not only from the front but the back, and that's where Dorian's strength was. And he beat it. He just beat him. I was 3rd in this competition.
I was not judging there, but if I was, I find it hard not to go to Nasser on that one.
He should have won. Yeah, it was Nasser. It was Nasser.
I honestly believe he deserved the Olympia in '97. He absolutely won that show.
You put El Sonbaty ahead of Yates as impressive.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, I thought he should have won easy. Dorian was very vulnerable that year. I thought Nasser beat him. Flex Wheeler at 100% on that given day beats him.
97, I said that Nasser should deserve to beat Dorian.
Some people think I shouldn't have won.
I think I should have, but
Even if I'm off, it's pretty impossible to beat me on because of my structure. How can Dorian get a perfect score with an imperfect physique? It just really shows that people saying that, they don't know how the contest is judged. It's judged on 11 compulsory poses. There's only one pose that torn biceps would affect, and that was front double bicep. So I lost the front double bicep to everyone in the contest. But there's still 10 other poses. Side chest can be beaten by some people. Nasser was probably better in the side chest in 97. Front lat spread, nobody can beat me. Back double biceps, nobody can really beat me. Side tricep, not the best triceps on the stage, I'm not saying that. From head to toe, I don't think I can be beaten that pose. I look very good in abs and thighs next to everybody because I had these huge lats. I think the majority of the poses would go to myself against Nasser.
Not since the 1980 and 81 Olympias has bodybuilding witnessed such a controversial decision. Nasser later said in an interview, he won despite a huge belly, looking like he was pregnant in the 6th month. This was a completely staged outcome and the biggest bodybuilding robbery of the 20th century by the clique of judges who judged.
I didn't want the Olympia 97. It had barely to do with my back development. I didn't show up like Dorian with almost 8 torn muscles, with 6 quad tears, with a hip tear, with biceps and a tricep tear, and then he still wanted a perfect score. Again, I feel robbed in 97, and it didn't have anything to do with my back, not whatsoever. To me, today, this was just a made-up story to put me in second and to make me shut up. You know, it was actually pretty difficult, and when I went back to the hotel room, I was actually crying because on stage I didn't want to cry because I felt completely robbed.
Nasser's supporters had their own theories about why they thought he was prevented from winning the biggest title in the sport. The most prominent was how unmarketable he would be due to his personality and where he was from. And Nasser voiced his own theories as well, stating, some judges did not want to upset their friend Dorian, and they did not want him to go out of bodybuilding with a defeat after all his injuries and tears. They did not want to give another non-US guy the most prestigious title in bodybuilding because it would underline the US inferiority in bodybuilding compared to non-US athletes.
One of the other reasons was, again, that I wasn't an NPC athlete. Dorian wasn't either, but at least he had a good connection to a lot of NPC people and also major people in the IFBB. So it works always good out if you know people and you talk to people and you invite people to your house and make your phone call. And I was never one of these guys who did that, and I didn't do it today.
This statement may or may not have had to do with the fact that 7 days before the 97 Olympia, head judge Steve Weinberger and his wife Bev Francis were at the Residence Inn with Dorian and his physiotherapist, and were the only people to know of his injury according to Peter McGuff, who was also there. This would line up with Sean Ray's claims in 96 that Dorian received favorable treatment.
I remember getting into an argument with Steve Weinberger, who was one of the judges, because they had told us at the athletes meeting that we couldn't have any seconds backstage. No one could help us backstage. So we were all back there to fend for ourselves, which was fine. And I looked over and I saw Steve Weinberger and Dorian Yates sequestered in a room. Jim Mannion, I think, was in there. But it looked like there was some type of activity going on in a room that had Mr. Olympia in there, because I thought there was an unfair advantage. We had IFBB judges looking at Mr. Olympia, helping Mr. Olympia. It just didn't look right.
Whatever the case may be, 1997 was a turning point for bodybuilding. And it was the last in Dorian's career, whose many injuries forced him to an early exit. And so, was 98 about to finally be Nasser's year? With the 98 Olympia title being up for grabs, Nasser had great hopes of taking over as bodybuilding's top man. At 280 pounds, he finished second to Flex Wheeler at the 98 Arnold Classic and finished third in 2 Grand Prix contests. But the Olympia wasn't going to be easy with challengers like Sean Ray, Kevin Levrone, and everyone's favorite, the returning Flex Wheeler.
We'll see if it's my show or the show of anyone else, because the show will be very good because there are a lot of good competitors, about 3 to 4 different guys who can take the title. So we'll see who's the best at the day of the show.
In third place, Nasser El Sonbaty.
When Dorian went out of the game, my time seemed to be also over. When I went to the 98 Olympia, I wanted for sure win the Olympia, but I really didn't have the belief they would give it to me, regardless how I would be looking. I had somehow a bad feeling. And again, I think it was a political decision that they never created the protest for me that I could win the Olympia.
Nasser's sixth pro victory at the 1999 Arnold Classic signaled the last hurrah of a broken man who'd go on to rapidly fall down the bodybuilding card.
Sixth place finisher, Nasser El Sonbaty. In fifth place, Nasser El Sonbaty. The ninth place finisher, Nasser El Sonbaty. Warm round of applause for the 11 guys that didn't make it.
As his standings faltered, Nasser faced accusations of synthol use in his delts, even getting hospitalized for an infection in that area. He brushed it off as a staph infection, citing scar tissue as the cause.
Nasser wasn't satisfied enough with the real delts he got from the drugs, so he decided to inject synthol.
I was complaining about him in '96 when he got third to me, and I said, he's putting shit in his shoulders. I can see it in his biceps. I see it in his calves.
You know, over the years, many of your critics have accused you of using synthol.
I don't know anybody who is in the sport involved who is more or less successful who did not experience synthol. So I would say synthol use is as common as using a toothpaste for most people in this world. I would say 95% of all athletes in the amateur and pro ranks are using synthol nowadays. There are even people in the judging panel who are using synthol, and even judges who have silicone casts sitting in the judging panel, and they're accusing other athletes of doing this or that.
Towards the end of his career, he even resorted to selling his used gym clothes, underwear, and posing trunks on his website.
Are people actually purchasing those used gym clothes that you're selling on your website?
They don't only order used clothes, they also order used underwear, which is for sure strange, but people have different tastes. There are a lot of different people on this planet.
Just like Mike Mentzer back in 1980, Nasser couldn't escape the bitterness he felt from being screwed over, stating, "I got robbed for at least $5 million US. To give a low number estimate when I am counting all the missed endorsements and opportunities connected to the Olympia title. I got so badly cheated, my trust will never ever be the same. The lost trust is beyond possible repair."
Nasser turned into what happened to Burl Fox after '83. You know, Mike Mentzer in 1980 at the Mr. Olympia, they couldn't digest the gravity of the defeat and the depression that comes with losing.
He wound up not even being able to make the top 10 of a regular show.
In your most recent 4 events, you finished no higher than 14th. Many of us are asking, why is the great Nasser El Sonbaty still competing?
After not winning the Olympia and then finally winning the Arnold Classic in '99, and also realizing that I will never win the Olympia regardless how I would be looking, even if I would have improved 10 or 20% my motivation went down. In 2003, I had basically injury. I had to go to hospital because of the staph infection. And then my personal goal at that time was not anymore winning the Olympia. It was just getting back into shape and proving to myself that I still can look good. And I have really to say I didn't look as good compared to all these other years. But again, you know, how many years should you run against the wall? And how much more chicken breast should you eat? So I think sometimes sooner or later it should be an end.
Upon stepping away from the stage, Nasser got even more outspoken in the press about his thoughts on bodybuilding. He even opened fire on fellow bodybuilders, including reprimanding Milos Sharchev for owing him $2,550 for steroids and for having silicone calf implants. Calling Sean Ray Chihuahua Ray, saying Sean Ray should apply for a job at FedEx because he tells everyone that he has a perfect package. Giving Paul Dillette the nickname The Great Plains because of all the wide open spaces on his physique. Mocking Greg Kovacs, whom he described as so big that he could hardly function. Taking a dig at Dave Palumbo, calling him Jumbo Palumbo, and criticizing his physique as distorted. And just like Mentzer, Nasser was going to carry his bitterness towards bodybuilding to his grave. For years, Nasser's cycle and steroid use have been a source of much speculation, some going as far as calling it the death cycle.
Nasser El Sonbaty ran some cycles that would make grown men cry.
So 1,500 milligrams
of so-called anabolic steroids per week, including the pills. And I'm not joking, guys. I had once a week where it took 5,000 milligrams of testosterone per week, and I have no problem to say.
This is Nasser's plan.
Why is it in your book?
Yeah, because we were talking together, we were discussing, and well, he would go crazy sometimes on a drill like you. You were doing a 4, right?
I did 4 at my peak, yeah.
Okay, he went as high as 10.
No.
That is a lot. 2 is a lot. You don't need more than 1, to be honest with you.
There were some kidney issues that were, his creatinine level was starting to go like high. It wasn't like at what I would call kidney failure yet, but it was definitely like going up. Actually, it might have been a 2-1.
In the end, in 2013, Nasser's father, who was living in Egypt at the time, got sick, which led Nasser to stay in Cairo for a while. Nasser, who himself required a heart transplant, which he did not qualify as a candidate for, died only months later in his sleep due to kidney and heart failure at the age of 47.
I would describe myself as self-motivated. So I try to stick by myself. Because bodybuilding is a lonely sport. You're on yourself most of the time. I like to be world-class, and to be world-class you have to give something special. You have to do something extra. If you're not doing it, then you should do something else. I'm in this sport not to become a millionaire, to become rich. I'm in this sport because I love the sport. I'm dedicated to the sport. People have so high expectations, I tell them stories, but there is no story to tell. It's always the same.
Do you have anything to say to someone trying to start out in bodybuilding, watching you, a fan?
No.
Thanks to Incogni for sponsoring this video.